Check out FlipsideGaming.com for all your gaming needs. Use the promo code HEROES to save 10% on all orders over $10 and support the channel at the same time. Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to the final day of Core Set 2019 previews. We're going to look at the last 27 cards that have yet to be revealed until now. And finally, we now get a full picture of what Standard is going to look like with all of the sets included before rotation that happens, of course, this fall. Quickly before we get started, though, just a fast reminder, if you check out the description below, you'll find a few ways to help support what we do here at the channel, one of which is our Patreon page. You're also going to find links to products on Amazon. If you make any purchases there, we'll get a small percentage, actually, no matter what it is. And finally, Flipside Gaming, still offering a promo code for our viewers, and hopefully you can save some cash while you support the channel. As always, thank you not only to the folks that look at those links, but to all the viewers. Y'all make the channel what it is, and let's get into it. First, we're going to start off with some cards that were previously leaked, but have now been confirmed. All of these cards we've already talked about, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them, but they were all found in Dominaria packs. Now we know officially they are truly legit. Angel of Dawn, Invoke the Divine, Knight of the Tusk for white. In blue, we had quite a few. Anticipate, Aviation Pioneer, Cancel, Disperse, Ghost Form, Omen Speaker, and Salvager of Secrets. In red, Goblin Instigator, Havoc Devils, Lava Axe, Sure Strike, and Tormenting Voice. And in green, Root Snare. Okay, let's move on to some brand new cards we haven't seen before. Aegis of the Heavens. This is a white and 1 instant uncommon target creature. Gets +1/+7 until end of turn. Little combat trick for limited, nothing more, not a lot to say about it. It's a very defensive combat trick, which isn't always a bad thing, but I'll find myself probably not running this all too often because I'd rather just play more powerful offensive cards or some removal spells if they're available. If they're not available in my pool, then I might fall back to this. Ether Tunnel. Blue and 1, Enchantment Aura, Uncommon, Enchant Creature. Enchanted creature gets +1/+0 and can't be blocked. This is a pretty decent aura. Even though it doesn't do anything to mitigate the risk of auras, I still kind of like this one because it's cheap and it has the potential to put a lot of damage across quickly, especially in a board stall. You just have to play it at the right time. Wait until your opponent is tapped out or don't have cards in their hand and try to use it maybe to close out a game or just push across a large amount of damage to set up for a game-winning turn next time. And this is actually very, very runnable. I like it more so probably in the Selesnya build, though, just splashing it, because it is only 1 blue, very splashable. The green-white cards in the set are very enchantment-focused, and they do have a lot of ways to mitigate the risk of enchantments. So if you work it into a deck like that, you might find a lot of value there. Hired Blade, black and 2, creature human assassin, common 3/2 with flash. Never a huge fan of 3/2s for 3. They trade down many times with 2/2s. However, I like this one because of the flash. I might be able to surprise my opponent from time to time. I might not always run it, but I can see myself putting it into many builds. Vampire Neonate. This costs 1 black. It's a vampire common, 0/3. Pay 2 and tap. Each opponent loses 1 life, and you gain 1 life. There's 2 situations where I would see myself playing this. One, if I'm really trying to gum up the board and keep the early threats off my back while I build into a more mid-range or late game plan. And maybe I'm playing a more control deck or a more top-heavy deck, or I could sign it in if I just am up against a very aggressive build. The other place I play this is if I'm in the black-white life gain deck. If there are payouts for gaining life, then this card becomes a lot better. If I'm not doing either of those 2 things, then I'll probably skip this one. Inferno Hellion. This is a red and 3. It's a Hellion uncommon 7/3 with trample at the beginning of each end step. If this attacked or blocked this turn, its owner shuffles it into their library. This reminds me a little bit of a variation on like ball lightning style creatures. It's different, obviously. It doesn't get sacrificed at the end of turn or anything like that. But once it engages in combat, if it's still alive, then you're going to be able to put it back into your library and shuffle. So it could come back at some point later in the game, perhaps. So it makes your opponent have to think a little harder about how to deal with this. Do they block it, give up a creature, maybe take a few points of damage, but then send it to the graveyard? Or do they just say, forget about it, I'm going to take the 7 and let you just shuffle it back in, and hopefully it doesn't come up again. It does depend probably on their build. Also, there are some graveyard interactions, so there are times where maybe your opponent doesn't want it to go in the graveyard. They might want you to shuffle it back in. That could get kind of interesting. So it's a unique uncommon. I'm going to give it that. I don't know if I play with it all the time. It's not a great card if you're behind. It's not the worst thing in the world. You can keep it as a blocker, but you're only going to be able to block with it once. Considering it's a 7/3, it's probably going to trade anyway in that situation, but for 4 mana, maybe you at least trade it up. Yeah, I could see myself running it. Maybe not all the time, but a good percentage of the time. Greenwood Sentinel. Green and 1, it's an Elf Scout, common 2/2 with Vigilance. Pretty standard stuff here. I mean, this card is a 2/2 for 2 with upside. You know how I feel about those. So I'm going to play this and be really happy with it in limited. Helens of Wildwood. Green and 1, enchantment aura, common enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has trample. Green and 2, return this from your graveyard to your hand. This is what I was talking about earlier when I said that there's going to be ways in green and white to mitigate the risk of auras. And this, you throw it on a creature dies, it goes to the graveyard, this goes to the graveyard. But now later on for a green and 2, you can actually bring this back to your hand, try it again. That's pretty good. I like that. And it only costs 2 initially. Also, the +1/+1 and trample is a good effect, especially to push damage across in a board stall. Maybe you have some big green creature with no evasion or trample. This makes that creature a lot better. Be smart when it comes to auras, but at least this one gives you some wiggle room. And here's our last rare. Transmogrifying Wands. This is going to cost 3. It's an artifact, rare. When this enters the battlefield, it will have 3 charge counters on it. Pay 1, tap. Remove a charge counter from the wand. Destroy target creature. Its controller creates a 2/4 white ox creature token. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. I like the top-down design. I'm going to give it that. So do you actually play this thing in limited is the question. I think I do. I'm maybe not crazy about it, but I think I play it. It's going to be better, though, in the Azorius build because you want artifacts anyway in that build, and this is a fine one. For 3, it's not very expensive. It does something that could be relevant. Like, it's going to be a better card in that build than other builds, but I might still run it in a vacuum anyway, just simply because I know that a 2/4 is annoying, but a 5/5 flyer is a lot worse, right? So there's going to be moments where my opponent's going to have a great creature with evasion. I can put this down and eventually give them a 2/4. It's a little slow with the whole sorcery speed thing, but I think it's still fine. And once it's out there on the battlefield, my opponent's got to think twice now about when they're going to play their creatures. They may have to try to find a way to get rid of this first or try to bait me with some other weaker creatures. So that alone could help me slow down the game a little bit if I need to. The other thing you can do with this is actually use it on your own creatures. And it is still sorcery speed. You can't do it within combat or anything like that. But it is kind of interesting that you could turn maybe a 1/1 or 2/2 into a 2/4. But at the same time, it also feels sort of mediocre because it's a 2/4 token. Tokens are going to be a little more fragile than the regular creatures anyway. But I don't know. It's an option. Every once in a while, it might make sense to do that. Yeah, I run it. When I open this, I'm not going to be thrilled necessarily, but I probably still run it. All right, let's look at the final cards now. And these are all reprints from other sets that we've seen before. I'm going to go through these a little bit quicker since you're probably familiar with a lot of them. Make a Stand. Simple trick here, but giving everything +1/+0 and indestructible will be especially good in those Boros go wide strategies. Bone to Ash. This is a card we've seen many, many times. And counterspells can be good if you're trying to be a little more methodical and controlling. Not all decks will be. Is this better than a cancel? I would say some of the time. If you don't have a lot of ways to draw cards in your deck, I might play this over a cancel. But if I do have other ways to draw cards, which you might very well in blue, I'm going to prefer the cancel to this, but at the end of the day, especially in sealed, I'm going to play what I got, and this is just fine. Essence Scatter. Now, this is a really good counterspell for limited purposes because you know there's going to be a lot of creatures coming out. Sure, it can't take care of every problem, but creatures are going to be one of your main concerns. So yes, this is going to be fantastic if you're trying to be a little more controlling. Doom Dissenter. I saw this card previewed today, and I was kind of like, wait a minute, didn't they already preview that card? And then I remembered that it was in Battle Bond. And Battle Bond previews were like 2 weeks ago. I feel the same way. Haven't changed. But actually, this card feels even better here because Rakdos does have the whole Aristocrats sacrifice for benefit effect going on. So this is a pretty decent card just generally, but it becomes even better in that type of deck. Duress. Duress is sometimes awkward and limited. Like, it is playable out of the board. But I usually don't main deck it because many decks will be super creature-centric. Now, there's going to be targets for Duress from time to time, obviously, especially if you happen to get it in your opening hand. But if you get it later in the game and your opponent only has a few more targets, they're probably like big bomb creatures 99% of the time, so it doesn't always do well there. However, if I'm playing against my opponent in game 1 and I feel like they have an unusual amount of non-creature spells, then I'll bring it in. Infectious Horror. I'm not thrilled with this one. I mean, sure, you can make an argument it's common, and if you happen to have a whole bunch of these, and maybe you're on a zombie plan, of course it gets a lot better. But a 2/2 for 4 just doesn't feel good to me. I just think it's too slow. By the time it comes out, it's not doing enough. I don't know, that just doesn't feel great for 4 mana. Macabre Waltz. Now, this is one of my favorite limited cards in other sets, and I think it's going to be great here too, especially with that Rakdos sacrifice for benefit thing going on. So, it's really cheap, and you get 2 cards back from your graveyard, 2 creature cards back from your graveyard, and you get to discard a card. Remember, discarding a card sometimes will be a drawback, but sometimes it won't, because there are graveyard interactions like Reanimation in the set too. You could use that to your advantage. But what I like about this card, even if I'm not doing that, is simply I can get real loose with my trades and stuff early in the game, and later on I play this card, go back to my graveyard, pull a couple things back. It feels very economical, almost like card draw. I am always happy to play 1, sometimes 2 of these things. Mind Rot back again, and I don't always run Mind Rot when I play Limited, but if I am trying to be a little more resource conscious and trying to attrition my opponent more, I'll definitely run it. It's not a bad card at all in Limited. I think the reason it's here, though, more so, is because it is target player. So you can target yourself to discard cards for graveyard interactions, which again could be relevant. If you're in a more aggressive build and you're just trying to beat down with creatures, then skip it, but you will play this at least some of the time. Bogart Brute, another 3/2 for 3. But it has Menace, so I'm okay with it. It's also a Goblin, which could be relevant at times. Crash Through. Nice game-ending card again if you're trying to go big. If you're going tall as opposed to wide, especially, this is great for you. Gruul Colors, you'll love this because you'll have those big dumb creatures that don't have trample or evasion, and at some point you might be able to end the game with them if everything goes your way. And this cantrips, which is always nice too. Dragon Egg. This is another card I actually really like. It's a defender. They sprinkled a few defenders in here for that synergy, but aside from that, even on its own, this 0/2 for 3 sometimes just slows down your opponent a lot. They play their 2/2, you play this, they don't want to attack you now because they don't want to have to deal with the 2/2 fire-breathing dragon that could be coming at them. Also, remember, Rakdos has a lot of sacrifice going on, so you could put this out, sack it, get the dragon. That seems pretty good. Tectonic Rift. Usually I say with these forecasting cost destroy a land cards that I don't play them in my main unless I'm in a situation where I feel like my opponent is getting greedy with colors, or maybe there's a non-basic land that I'm worried about, then I'll side it in. This is a little different though because of that second ability. Creatures without flying can't block this turn. If I'm going wide, even going tall, but especially going wide, this could be a good card for me, and I might just play it regardless of the whole destroy land thing. Daggerback Basilisk. Here's another card that was in Battlebound, actually. And I like this one then. I still like it. My opinion hasn't changed much. It's a 2/2 with Death Touch for 3. Yeah, 2/2 for 3, not awesome, but it has Death Touch, so I'm fine with it. A lot of times it's going to feel kind of like a removal spell. Garapor Guide, another 3/2 for 3, but another card that has a decent ability attached to it. Again, especially if you're going with larger creatures, maybe those Gruul Colors again, because say I have a 5/5 on the battlefield, and they have like a 3/3 and a 2/2. I can target my creature with this, and now they're either going to have to chump block or take the 5. There are going to be moments where this card is going to be good for you. Gift of Paradise, another card I've played a lot in Limited and really liked it. It ramps you a little bit, it fixes color, which will be very relevant at times, especially in the set if you happen to get a real cool gold card pull. And it also gains you some life, so it deals with some early aggression too. Overall, there's a lot of good reasons to main deck this, but you could also side it in if you're up against a more aggressive build. Naturalize, back again, which makes sense in this set. Azorius has the artifact focus. Of course, Selesnya has the enchantment focus, so they're putting an answer out there for those problems in Limited. I'm not going to most likely main deck this in this environment, I don't think, but I would sideboard it in when I need it. Explosive Apparatus. Here's another one of those Limited cards that I found myself playing more and more as time went on. I believe it was from Shadows over Innistrad. But it's real cheap, a 1 casting cost artifact, which is going to be great for Azorius purposes again. But even aside from that, the 3 and tap and sacrifice to do 2 damage to any target can be really helpful sometimes. Gargoyle Sentinel. This is maybe one of the better artifact creatures you'll find in the set. 3/3 Defender for 3 is actually pretty decent, and then you can activate it by paying 3 to turn it into a 3/3 flyer that can attack until end of turn. Yeah, I mean, it does eat your resources a little bit if you want to go offensive, but it's pretty strong considering the casting cost, and it's a great blocker. Millstone. That's actually a pretty cool reprint. Now, in a 40-card deck situation like Sealed and Draft, guess what? Millstone can actually be pretty good for you. And it's at uncommon. You could maybe even get 2 of these. We saw a fantastic mill card yesterday. That could really be a thing in limited. So Millstone is one to watch for in drafts, especially if you're in a draft that's maybe not going well and you're looking for a secondary win condition. This could be it. If you can gum up the ground a little bit with some high toughness creatures, play some control around this could be a win condition sometimes. Alright, guess what? That's Core Set 2019. We are there. We now know every card that's going to be in Standard until rotation this fall. And keep in mind, once people start figuring out what their deck is going to be for this season, it might not happen right away, but once there is some competitive play and people get to see some deck lists, some will wait to the Pro Tour. But then people are going to start selling off cards that are going to rotate out. You're going to see some price drops coming this summer, so we'll talk more about that in the future. Tomorrow we'll have another edition of the Market Watch, as a matter of fact. But until then, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.